Hey guys, so I want to share a simple insight I had recently that's had a profound impact on my ability to have everything I want. So, some backstory as to that will make sense as to why this has been impactful for me. So, for I guess all my adult life, I've been interested in the idea that if we can cultivate in our imagined experience having what we want, maybe through being connected to a vision or having the emotions of it, if we could just do that, then that would create in us a state of being, a way of acting, behaviors that would lead us to take actions that would produce that outcome, or maybe even on a more magical or spiritual level, living with that internal imagined experience, then that would, on some quantum level, some energetic spiritual level, that would move the universe and produce that outcome and have it become material and actual and real, right? And so there was this idea that if I could generate the phenomenology, the experience of something, then the actuality, the ontology of it would follow as kind of a causal result. And while I do believe in that and have faith in that, I would say it has never been absolute and total. And I've been working over the years to create more an absolute and total belief that if I could just create the imagined experience, then I could actually have, that would lead to the actual having. If I could imagine having it, then the more powerfully I can imagine it, the more powerfully it leads to me actually having it. And I've made progress. I've become more able to create an imagined experience as a means of producing the actuality. But recently I had an insight that made the whole problem go away. So I'm studying Martin Heidegger, and one of the things he talks about is really collapsing, this is my language, collapsing ontology into phenomenology, collapsing the actuality of out there into the experience. He talks about a chair touching a wall in his book, Being in Time, Sein und Zeit. And when is a chair touching a wall? Like, how close does it have to actually be? Some might say if it's a centimeter, it's touching the wall. Or some might say, no, it has to actually be physically touching. But then if you were to zoom in with a microscope on when it's leaning against the wall, you'd actually see that it's not touching, that the molecules aren't, there's actually space between them. And so when is it actually touching? And I've extrapolated this metaphor into the world of money, and I use this with my clients. And I'm like, when do you actually have the money that you're being paid? Is it when you send the invoice out, or is it when the cash hits the bank? So when it hits the bank, is it when it's like a pending transaction, or when it's posted? Is it available funds? Like, when did you actually have it? Oh, is it when it's in the bank, or is it when you've withdrawn it as cash? And then when do you have it? Is it when you're holding the cash, or when the cash is in your house or your mattress? Or is it like holding it in your hand, or do you have to hold it close, or do you have to eat it? Like, when do you have it? When do you have the money? And so you start to see that having, as an idea, as a concept, is something that's made up. There is no having other than the having that we conceptualize. Is a decision that we make, somewhat subconsciously, culturally common decision as to what having is. People will tend to agree when somebody has had or not have. Going back to Germany, actually, the word there versus here, it's like, it's a different use in German than there's in English. It's like over there would be for something, I could even say this, like there in German would refer to something I'm holding, but we'd say this in American English, right? So it's like you go from one language to the other, and where there is or what having is will change. And so if that's the case, then where is having? How do we know when we have? We can't know. We actually just decide. We choose what having is. And so if that's the case, if the line is kind of between what is actually had and what's imagined to have, if that line is made up, then maybe the whole idea that there's a difference is made up. And this is the insight that I've had, that all having is actually a state of being. So when I have, it's not that I actually have, it's that I am that I have. So if that's the case, then there is no having other than the imagined experience of having. Case in point, somebody could, in their bank account, there could be $1 million and they could have no money in their experience. Or somebody could have nothing in their bank account and they could live the experience of having all the money they need. You see, the point is that having is not dependent on what is actually occurring out there. Why is this important? How does this help me? Because the problem that I was trying to solve, if I could just fully experience having despite not actually having it, the belief that those two things, the experience of having and actually having it, were distinct, was actually creating the gap in my capacity to fully experience having something. You see that? By believing that there's a difference between the imagined experience of having and actually having, I'm setting up the problem in the first place. And so through seeing how that distinction is an illusion, my capacity to create the imaginative experience of having, to create, we could just say the experience of having. We could say even more simply, my ability to create havingness, right? To nessify it, to turn it into a thing, having as a thing. My ability to create havingness, having, has gone up exponentially because I no longer see it as something that I'm doing in order to get to some other result in a future time that I'm not in, to get to some other result outside of my capacity to control. Having, as I experience it, is all there is to having. That doesn't mean there's not an ontology. That doesn't mean there is an is out there, that there's not something beyond my experience. All it means is that my experience of having that thing is no greater. My capacity to have the experience to have it is no greater when that actuality is or isn't. My having is an experience always. And if that's the case, there's no doing it in order to get to some other having, because I'll never be able to have it more just because it actually is, so I might as well have all of it now. This is what I think is meant in that biblical strict scripture. It's Matthew 12 or Matthew 13, and it goes, "To those who have, more will be given. To those who have not, all will be taken away." And there's a Wikipedia page on the Matthew effect. This shows up in all sorts of ways. You can see it in network systems, you can see it in finance, but I think on the psychological, spiritual level, it's true also that those who generate the phenomenological experience of having get to have more and more and more. And those who have the internal experience of not having get less and less and less. And they get less and less or more and more, both phenomenologically, both in their experience and also actually out there in the world, because the world is a reflection of what we experience and feel. There is a dance between the two. But I think the point is your experience of having can generate more experience of having, and that's what I found. By collapsing this distinction, by dissolving the distinction that there's such thing as having is an experience and an actual having, there's no difference, there's no distinction, it doesn't exist. All there is for having is only an experience. So having that experience of reality has allowed me to be able to have everything that I want, whether or not I have it. I have a house on a hill in Hawaii already. I have it as much and maybe even more than I will when I have it, because at that point maybe I'll be having something else. What if I'm always having something that I don't have? What's the problem with that? There's only a problem if there's a difference between having experientially and having actually. There's not anymore. So I can have everything I want, and every morning I'm connected to, I have everything I want and more. I have it all. I know this is maybe, well, there's a horn beeping right now. I don't know if you're having distraction from that like I was, but I'm not anymore. I'm having clarity and presence with you now. Let me know if this works for you, if you can see the power in letting go of the idea that there's a difference between experiential having and actually having. If you can actually see, feel, hear, get that having is totally an experience, and once you see that, if you can realize the freedom and the capacity to create the experience of having so much greater than you ever had before, for things that are actually in your world, maybe you are not actually having them. Another way of saying, be grateful for what you have, be grateful for what actually is, be grateful for what isn't yet, because gratitude, guess what, works the same way. It doesn't need to be actualized for you to be grateful for it. Have everything that you want, be grateful for it, whether or not it shows up, and guess what, you die happy. You've already got it. If you can create the experience of having it, you don't need it because you've already got it. My name is John Patrick Morgan. If you didn't know that by now, maybe I haven't met you before. This is your first time watching this video, but that's probably unlikely. If you'd like to be in conversation, the best place for us to do that is in Creators Circle or one of my creating partnerships. But anyway, check out the links. Join my email list. You get these kind of long videos and short bite-sized emails a couple times a week. Anyway, that's it. I love you. Thank you for listening. Bye for now.